We got Dan, we got Zach here with us. Tyler Uremchuk, not in the building. Dad's not here, which means, fellas, we're going to have a little bit of fun today. We're going to keep it loose. It's beautiful outside in Edmonton. Hey, I don't know if you saw, it's supposed to be like 30 degrees this weekend in Edmonton. Like
Yeah.
35, something wild like that. I may or may not be heading out to BC this weekend where it's supposed to get upwards of 40 degrees. So, but I love hot weather, so I'm looking forward to it. Before we
As a
get rolling,
fat guy, I am ready for winter.
hey, not yet. Hey, we just had the longest day of the year yesterday, so although it's sad to say, we are on the trend now towards winter. I don't know if you can say that in June, but fellas, before we get into the hockey talk, how we doing? We keeping it loose, enjoying the summer,
Just living the dream.
living the dream.
Working hard, sweating balls, all that good stuff.
Yeah, you can tell I'm in the summer mood. I got my Floral Oilers Nation hat on, so
Yep.
keeping it festive, keeping it summery. Got to keep it light.
Got one before they sold out, Zach.
I was just gonna say that,
Last
Dan.
one.
I think that they might be sold out. Those hats are pure. So if you haven't picked one up, sucks because I'm pretty sure they're sold
Damn
out.
bad.
But I think that we are going to resupply them. So
No.
keep it locked on Nation Gear. Oh, we're not going to resupply them, Dan?
No, we're not. We're not. You miss out. You miss out. That's just the way it goes in life.
That's it.
Josh?
It's like an
Stay
NFT.
tuned to socials.
You had one chance. Yeah, no, keep it locked on all our socials. I think that we're going to resupply them eventually. Fellas, we got a few different topics we're going to cover today. Of course, we live in Alberta and we are Oilers fans, so I think it would only be appropriate that we address the Tkachuk rumors that are going on right now. Supposedly, Matthew Tkachuk wants out of Calgary. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the two series that are still going on here. Some reports this morning from Tom Gazzola. Zach, I know you were tweeting about it. Apparently, the Edmonton Oilers are going to be going towards the navy dark blue jerseys full time next year, mixing in the orange ones every once in a while. We want to get your opinion on that, so make sure you throw it in the comments on Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, wherever you are watching on. And then as well, Oilers prospects. We want to talk about which Oilers prospects we think are completely untouchable with supposed trade talks coming up as the Oilers try to bolster this roster going in to the 2021-2022 season. Dan, I'll start with you. You mentioned it before we started the stream here. I'll admit it. I'll be totally transparent. I haven't watched a ton of hockey over the last 2 weeks here. Apparently some tough officiating going on in the Habs Vegas series, or what's going on?
Yeah, it's been a complaint for both teams, which is usually a good indication that it's pretty bad. The Golden Knights have gotten away with nearly taking off Corey Perry's nose, which may have been an upgrade to that face, but it's a complaint that I think, while warranted, completely warranted right now, is hilarious to keep hearing. We keep having this discussion, and then we get a lot of people like Brian Boucher saying, "Pipe down, you're being too noisy," and then we'll do it again. And it's just going to be a cycle until the end of time, until the league decides to make a change, which I think is necessary when it comes to playoff hockey. When we talk about regular season refereeing and we talk about playoff hockey refereeing, it's two different stories. And every year we go through this cycle of, okay, this is too much, or this thing is being called too much, or we need to review this thing. The offside. Correct me if I'm wrong, but offside reviews came out of a playoff issue as well. So it's just I feel like I'm in a hamster wheel, and I'm just rolling around every year and seeing the same issues over and over again. It's understandable, it's justifiable to be frustrated with it, but at some point the change has to be made by the league, and until then, I guess we just keep bitching.
Zach, I'll let you kind of address that as well. But one question I want to ask you is, I know a lot of people on Twitter were saying stuff along the lines of, oh, it's good for the NHL to have Vegas in the Stanley Cup final. The NHL wants that big American market in the Stanley Cup championship. I have a bit of a hard time with that kind of rhetoric because, yes, I think it would be, good for the NHL to have Vegas in the finals, but also, Montreal is a big market, and to have an Original Six team in the Stanley Cup final, I don't think necessarily would be an issue for the NHL because, there's a lot of revenue that could be generated on that platform as well. So do you think that the NHL, like, I know they'll never come out and it's never something that you could confirm, but do you think the NHL really wants Vegas in the Stanley Cup final, or do you think it would kind of go either way?
Well, I think everybody with the tinfoil hats right now says that the NHL is trying to set it up so that it's, Vegas and Tampa, and they have all of the fans in the stands, and they have a chance to make, the extra revenue that they've lost over the last year and a half. a Stanley Cup final between Vegas and Tampa is not going to bring in any kind of negligible revenue that's going to turn the tide of the way the NHL is looking at this situation. I don't think the NHL really cares who's in there because no matter what happens, there's great storylines, there's passionate fan bases. The top four teams that are in the playoffs right now are there deservedly so. If it's Montreal that's in there, I think it's tremendous. I think it's an even better situation if Montreal's in there versus somebody like Vegas. You're right, Josh. It's an original six team. It's a huge market. It's a massive market, one of the biggest in the NHL. So I don't think there would be any complaints. And with the way that things have been trending with the slow removal of COVID restrictions across Canada here, there's a chance that we could see a place like Montreal and Quebec look at getting more fans in the stands if they're able to safely do so should the Canucks, the Canadians, make it to the Cup final.
Zach, you addressed it well there. I think we almost forget that Montreal is a huge market. Like that Habs market is absolutely huge. And I think that we only sometimes realize it when Montreal even comes to Edmonton and you really see how many Habs fans there are even living in this city. You see when Toronto comes to town, they're always going to have a lot of, visiting fans in the building. But man, when Montreal plays in Edmonton, it's just wild. And of course, that can also be, a part of it being an original six team. But yeah, the market's huge. I think that right now would be an appropriate time for us to jump right into the jersey talk because we got a lot of people in the Facebook comments that are talking about the jerseys. Report from Tom Gazzola this morning that the Oilers are going to be going essentially full time to those dark sort of third jersey navy blues that we saw in the playoffs this last year, and they debuted them I think 2 seasons ago. Dan, I'll start with you on this one. Your thoughts on the Oilers trying to essentially pretty much full-time transition into those dark blue jerseys?
I like jerseys. I don't know how else to say it. Like I just like jerseys, and so it I just feel like people are just wanting to be angry about something. If they went to the royal blue, people would be mad because they didn't go to the orange. If they went to the orange, people would be mad because they didn't do anything with the navy blues. Sometimes I think people just want to be upset about stuff. I get it. You want your kit that you like to wear more often than not as the team that's going to wear it on the ice every day. But I don't know. It's just like they can't make everybody happy. I understand that part of it probably is because they didn't sell that many of this third jersey because it wasn't something that they went to full time until this playoff run, and they haven't had fans in the stands to really be able to sell those jerseys and make people want to buy them. So I understand it from a marketing perspective. Tom also mentioned in his little tidbit that he likes to float out there every once in a while about jerseys that they will be looking at going back to those royal blues, and I fully expect another debate that's going to upset some people and make other people happy when that happens as well.
Let us know in the comments, what jerseys would you like to see the Oilers go to full time, whether it's this season, next season. If you could pick any jersey in Oilers past to be the full-time home jersey, what would you pick? Zach, where do you come out on this?
Sorry, I'm such a curmudgeon.
I love the blues. I love the navy blues. I think they're the sharpest Oiler jersey right now. Look, I'm a simple man. I like simplistic things. I like keeping it simple. I don't like big flashy things as I sit here wearing a floral hat, for God's sake. But I like the jerseys. I think they're sharp. I think they're a good look, and I don't hate it at all. There's nothing wrong with, deviating from the norm for a little bit for a year or two here or there. The Oilers are still going to wear the other jerseys. Edmonton wore the alt blues, now full-time blues, in 43% of their home games last year. It wouldn't surprise me to see the Oilers go, the other way this upcoming year, where 43% of the time they wear their traditional blue and orange at home and wear those dark ones on a more regular basis. I think, people love to be mad about things, and this is just another one of those things that people are going to love getting their knickers in a knot about, so to speak.
I don't have a huge issue with the dark blue jerseys. Like, yeah, I think that every once in a while, even 2 years ago when there were still fans in the building and stuff, whenever the Oilers would skate out in those dark blue jerseys, it was almost kind of fun. It was exciting because it was more of a unique thing. It was kind of like a treat you would get every once in a while with those dark blues. personally, if I could pick any jersey for the Oilers to go back to, it would be those like bright orange jerseys that they wore during the 2017 playoff run. Like those orange crush, clean, simple, kind of styled around the jerseys they wore in the 80s. Like those nice orange ones, man. I personally think those are the best Oilers jerseys of all times. And I don't know if it's because of the nostalgia that brings with the 2017 playoff run, but man, I still have 3 of those jerseys, and I would go back to those in a heartbeat, and then mix in those like kind of nice modern royal blue ones every once in a while. But we'll see what happens. We'll see if they're going to go back to those new or those navy ones for one season, and then it'll be interesting to see, Dan, like you mentioned, what happens after this upcoming season.
Well, what I'd like to see the Oilers do is go to a 42 jersey schedule where we all wear just wacky, Oregon Ducks Nike jersey kind of idea, where it's just a new digital camo print for this game, and I'm all for having some fun with the jerseys, but yeah, at the end of the day, they're still the Edmonton Oilers. Doesn't matter what jersey they're wearing on their shirt or on their bodies. They could go without shirts and they'd still be the Edmonton Oilers, and I would enjoy that too.
I was going to say the Oregon Ducks. I don't remember if this is 100% correct, but I remember reading this somewhere. Apparently, the Oregon Ducks, they never wear the same jersey combination once in a season. So it's always like different pants.
That's their arrangement with Nike, yeah.
Yeah, different pants, different jersey, different helmet. I remember when I played high school football, man, that was like the most exciting part of the game day was trying to figure out what jerseys we were wearing and stuff. The all whites, those are my favorite. White helmet, white jersey, white pants. We saw some rumors coming out of Calgary this weekend that supposedly Matthew Tkachuk might want out of Calgary. Zach, I'll start with you.
Who could blame him?
How much, truth do you see in this rumor, and could you see a team that would be fitting to trade for Chucky?
Well, we haven't seen any of the big names in the hockey media reporting this sort of information yet, so take it with a grain of salt at this point in time. I think the initial report came from Shane O'Brien from Sportsnet. It's an interesting thing to talk about right now when we talk about the Calgary Flames. They're in a really precarious spot. They don't have the strongest prospect pool. Their roster as is aging and struggling. You have guys like Johnny Gaudreau and Sean Monahan that have for the most part underwhelmed in the last number of years, especially when the going gets tough in the playoffs for them. And then they just went out and signed Jacob Markstrom to a massive deal last year and brought in a coach in Daryl Sutter, who unquestionably comes back because he wants to win a Stanley Cup. Daryl Sutter isn't coming out of quote unquote retirement, to just coach a middling team. He wants to see success with them. Trading Matthew Tkachuk could land them a pretty solid package if they were to go that route. I could see teams out east in Pittsburgh and in the New York Rangers being two teams that could have a lot of interest out there in a guy like Tkachuk. Of course, there's the Ottawa connection. Given that his brother Brady plays there right now, I think that would be a really interesting route as well. I think any of those teams could put together pretty solid packages for Matthew Tkachuk.
The team that I've seen floated out there a little bit over the last 2 days here has been St. Louis. Obviously, there's a connection there. I'm pretty sure he's from there. His dad, I think, played there. I could be wrong on both of those ends, but I know there's a big connection for him to St. Louis. Dan, would you say that, the package that supposedly, let's say Tkachuk does get traded, the package that comes back in return, it's got to start with probably a first-round pick, a grade A prospect, and then something else on top of that, no?
Well, it depends on what Calgary thinks they are, right? That's this signing. Zach touched on it. The signing of Jacob Markstrom could go down as one of those ones where they really decided to sink, and it could have been a swim situation had they been a better team in front of him. But looking back on that, if they had just signed Cam Talbot for a $2 million deal and went out and got some scoring help, that team is in a way different position, I think, right now than they are as it stands. Getting back to your question, yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to believe that the Calgary Flames would want to sit back and take some prospects on and take on some futures for Matthew Tkachuk. But are they going to get just off the top of my head, I don't even know on Ottawa who would be worth a pick or a player there that would be comparable to what Tkachuk is going to bring to that team. So. It's kind of just it's a decision time. If this is the case, which hilarious if it is, because as an Oilers fan, we've all been there. We know what it's like to have a bunch of players that don't want to be in your city anymore. But I mean, go East, young man. Go thrash it up in the Eastern Conference. We don't have to worry about you anymore. If Calgary has to make that move, I don't see a place where they win.
Yeah, it's such a weird scenario for the Flames because obviously, like you guys mentioned, they're locked into that Markstrom deal for a while now, and this last offseason, if you're the Flames, the way that you were approaching it was, yeah, we're a win now team. Like we're gonna get our goalie here, and we're gonna try to bolster this roster and give ourselves a shot to win now. And now all of a sudden, after seeing what happened for them this last season, if you are trading Matthew Tkachuk, the way that you approach that is gonna kind of send a message to your fan base based on what you see this team as now. If you're getting a first round pick and a prospect back in return, that's pretty much you surrendering to your fan base and saying, we're not as good as we thought we were. And even though we're locked into Jacob Markstrom for 6 or 7 or however many years it is now, kind of a tough situation for them. But yeah, as Oilers fans, seeing kind of trouble in quote unquote paradise down in Calgary is it's not the worst situation we've ever seen. One other thing, I had another topic on the top of my head. Oh, I mentioned to you guys, with this being a pretty important offseason for the Edmonton Oilers coming up here. Obviously, there's a lot of UFAs. We can imagine that the Oilers are going to be, taking a good run at a couple different UFAs here, but also trades are going to be on the table. So I want to ask each of you fellas what Edmonton Oilers' current prospects are quote unquote untouchables for you. I know if the return would be good enough, then obviously I don't know if there's any prospects for the Edmonton Oilers that would be considered untouchables. But if you're looking at potential trade partners coming up here and you're giving me Oilers prospects that you do not want to touch and you want them to stay put, who would they be? Zach, I'll start with you. Your Oilers prospects untouchables.
Probably the only one for me would be Dylan Holloway at this point. I think he's got a great projection into the Oilers' top 6 in the future. But even with that, I wouldn't consider him truly untouchable. I don't think anybody on this team is really untouchable in that sense of the term. Obviously, the Oilers are never trading Connor McDavid. They're never trading Leon Draisaitl. Darnell Nurse, he's not going anywhere. He's going to be here for a very long time. Beyond those 3 guys, I think anybody could be traded at any point in time. Obviously, the Oilers value certain players more than they will others. When it comes to the prospect pool, I don't really see anybody down there that I wouldn't trade right now for immediate long-term help in the Oilers' top 6.
Dan?
Well, I think for me, Zach's right. There's not really an untouchable in our prospect pool, but for me, I think that their value would be too low right now if you moved on guys like Broberg, Bouchard, and there's another one that was escaping me. Savoy. Where it's just where we just don't know what we have in those kids yet. And so for me, it's like if you're parceling those guys in a deal, those are players, to me at least, that from the little bit that I've seen of them, you're probably not going to get the value that you should be getting from, especially a Bouchard. I like Broberg's game overall, and then Savoy again. Savoy has that ceiling and that uptick that you don't necessarily see it with NCAA play. It's good to see good NCAA play from both him and Holloway, but you want to see that in the AHL and you want to see how that translates to the pro game. So for me, it's more just, I don't want to see those guys thrown away in a package unless it's something that's bringing in a substantial player on the other end that you couldn't say no to.
Ricky Thiessen in the Facebook chat says, no one is untouchable when building within a winning window. And I think that is the reality for the Edmonton Oilers right now. We've seen teams in the past where you're dishing out some of your grade A prospects to win now, and you're like, oh, what the heck? How could that team part with that guy? He has such a bright future. But, for the Oilers, we'll see what happens here. If I had to give one untouchable for me in regards to the prospect pool, and let us know in the Facebook comments, I'm looking at them right now, who your untouchables are in the Edmonton Oilers prospect pool. I think that Evan Bouchard for me is realistically an untouchable, because I think that the Oilers organization, they look at Bouchard and I think that they think his ceiling is high. Like, obviously you can look at what happened last season and how many games he played and how the Oilers, didn't really give him that great of a shot, and he kind of sat in the prospects, or what am I saying, the press box for a lot of last season. But I think the Oilers view him as a guy that's going to be a full-time player next year. And I think if he's not a full-time player next year, then you have another issue. But I would say probably Bouchard is my number one untouchable in this prospect pool. All right. I think that's going to do it for another Tuesday edition of State of the Nation. A little bit of a fun one today. Talked about jerseys, talked about Tkachuk rumors and Oilers prospects. We're going to be back next Tuesday. Tyler will supposedly be back. We'll see. We think he will be. But yeah, fellas, absolute pleasure. It's going to be a long off season here, but lots of fun stuff coming up for the Edmonton Oilers. Draft coming up, expansion draft coming up. I think we're 30-ish days away from the expansion draft, maybe even a few less. So we'll see who the Oilers will be parting with. A lot of blocks to fall coming in the next few weeks here for the Edmonton Oilers. Fellas, an absolute pleasure. This edition of State of the Nation is